over to Sandra, who is going to introduce Jim.
Thank you, Celine. Everybody can hear me okay? Yes, good, good. Okay. Let's see. All right, that's going to go away. Well, the real difficulty for me is to say something brief about Jim, because he is one of the artists that I can go on and on and on about. But so I wrote something out to keep myself on track here. When Jim Koss came to the Northwest in 1980, the regional book arts community was just getting on its feet, with Copper Canyon in Port Townsend and Jawbone, Day Moon, Seal Press, Mare Blocker, and Sea Pen Press in Seattle. I think we met early in 1982, although he probably knows the exact date, when he showed me his one-of-a-kind book, Phoenix, and I immediately knew Jim brought something unique to the Northwest and to the field in general. Few artists working in books at the time did their own writing, and Jim stood out as balancing his many creative talents equally. From the beginning, it was obvious to me that what he wrote in his book was enhanced by his artistic talent, but never took a back seat to image or typography. I think Jim was the first artist I knew who balanced form and content equally and strived for perfection in both. There are 26 of Jim's pieces in the Book Arts collection in special collections at the University of Washington Libraries, and I never do a class session on book arts without some of his work. I hope when the world gets back to normal, everyone in tonight's audience can come and see some of his work in person. There's no substitute for the work in hand, and I think that's especially true with Jim's work. That's my part.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I was going to talk tonight about words, putting words together. I was not going to talk much about images. I had a student in 1978 who said, I always gave an assignment to combine words and images in some way. And he said he was very uncomfortable with that because he was okay with making images because he could hide behind them. But he was not comfortable with words because he could not hide behind them. I never thought of it one way or another. I always thought that words could tell a story the way images could tell a story. Consequently, I would do the both at the same time. I got started with haiku. I went to school in Japan in 1973, and so I started with haiku and waka, and I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. I came back to the United States and I continued my interest in Japanese stuff. I also I was taking a poetry class at the Art Institute in Chicago at that time, and got involved in poetry and literature. There was something about poetry that was a puzzle, and I was interested in unlocking that puzzle or solving that puzzle. I got involved with Charles Osen. There were poems in here that were just opaque. And I wasn't satisfied with it being opaque. There was one, In Cold Hell in Thicket, which was in cold hell in thicket, how abstract, as high mind, as not lust, as love is, how strong, as strut or wing or polytope, as things are constellated, how strong, how cold can a man stay confronted thus? All things are made bitter, and so on and so forth. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but there were a lot of poems in here that seemed like puzzles. What does not change is the will to change. What does not change is the will to change. He woke, fully clothed in his bed. He remembered only one thing, the birds. How, when he came in, he had gone around the rooms and got them back in their cage. The green one first, she with a bad leg, and then the blue, and then one they had hoped was a male, and so on. Anyway, these were, I was 26 years old, and these were mysterious things, but solving that puzzle was the important thing. Consequently, I thought, okay, I want to make poems that can be solved, but are not easy. I started with sonnets, and this was an interesting book, Zen Poems, China and Japan. This is very inspirative. Flint, spark, lightning, all too late. A timely quats crushes Mount Sumeru. Yet a body turning word plays ball on the tan and fall to. Then I started to get into sonnets. The sonnet was really, really interesting to me because it had to rhyme, it had to have a certain form, it have a certain number of words. So I got into Thomas Wyatt for another reason, because he was sort of he was problematic for Henry VIII. But there was one line at the beginning of this poem which really, really struck me. You probably all know it. They flee from me, but sometime did me seek. With naked foot stalking in my chamber. I have seen them gentle, tame, and meek, that now are wild, and do not remember that sometime they put themselves in danger to take bread at my hand, and now they range, beastly seeking with continual change. That's right. Thomas Wyatt was credited with introducing the sonnet to England. Petrarch was credited with inventing it. By such enchantment, air and wind were bound. Shakespeare. In high school, I got involved with Shakespeare a good deal. And his sonnets were impressive to me. Let's see. From fairest creatures we desire increase, that thereby beauty's rose might never die, but as riper should by time decease, his tender air might bear his memory, and so on and so forth. I liked the idea of the puzzle. 14 lines, 10 syllables per line, just like the haiku. 5, 7, 5. 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5. I tried to stick to that pattern. Around 1973, I started writing seriously. I had my poetry teacher at the Art Institute, who was really, really cool. And I started looking at, this was a result of being in Japan. I started looking at nature in a different way. I went there to study woodblock printing, because I was a printmaker. So I did that, but I also, at the same time, got involved in thinking about texts. One night, there was a terrific storm in Chicago, and it was just all crazy. All kinds of things were happening. And I wake up in the morning, and I made tea, and I had tea, and I wrote this thing. After the storm, a drawing hung on the wall, reflected in my tea, as though everything had sort of settled. After the storm, a drawing hung on the wall, reflected in my tea, which I thought was pretty cool. My teacher thought so too. I moved on from haiku to trying to write sonnets. And it took me a while, because they're a pain in the ass to get the rhyme right, to get the rhythm right. Everything has to be rhythm and rhyme. But once I got there, then it was, I couldn't do anything else. All I could do was write sonnets, blah, blah, blah. And it was nonsensical. It was just, so it was hard to get away from writing sonnets. This was one of the in the books, there was a transition between writing things and writing sonnets and writing poems of other kinds. This is Montana Charlie, Night at Montana Charlie's. And it was made, this is my third book. When I started letterpress at Mills College, I started printing my own words. And what I found was that the more you print your own words, the better you feel about them. And you want to make more. You want to write more. You want to do more. And one thing led to another. I've been making books since 1975. I have upwards of 300 books of my own, and a few more of other people's that I made. And they all have my text, because I don't have much patience with other people's texts. This is one of my favorites. It started with a notebook. I started doing these notebooks in 1977. I liked the size of the notebook, and it became all kinds of things. But for this particular book, it's in here. This was where it came from. I used to go to the Mills College cafeteria in the mornings in winter, because I had no heat in the place I was living. And once in a while, I would find that there was a fireplace in the adjoining room, the faculty room, which there was nobody there. So I would go and I would build up the fire, and I would sit there by the fire, and I would write in these notebooks. This book came from this book. And it was largely, autobiographical, but not strictly autobiographical. I turned it into something that was not particularly personal. I tried to keep things from not being personal, which is hard to do. This is one of my inspirations too. Candles. This was brought to me when I was in college. My teacher, Paul Ashley, had dealt with this book in graduate school too, and he gave me his notes for the book, because it's, there are all kinds of references and complexities and whatnot. And but this inspired me to do all kinds of things, partly because it was one long poem written over 40 years, thereabouts. Not parts of poems, but one lengthy adventure. There's a lot in it. you go to the end, and there's a beautiful poem at the end. I have tried to write paradise. Do not move. Let the wind speak. That is paradise. Let the gods forgive what I have made. Let those I love try to forgive what I have made. Hell of a way to end a poem. That gave me the idea to do these things. Ghost plays. Words and images. Hello. This originated with music. I was thinking of jamming, which I did for a while. And I would make an image and I would write words. Initially, I would just start and go see what happens. Words, images, words and images. I started in 1974. And I was aiming to do 100 of these. This is 96. There's a 97, and I'm working on 98. It'll get done, but the idea again was to make something large, something that would last over a period of time. Ghost plays were based on Japanese no theater. No theater consisted of several plays, several short plays, one of which was a spirit play and or ghost play, and in which a person who has passed away comes back to Earth to interact with, or not interact necessarily, but see what people are doing now that they're gone. And it intrigued me because I thought, well, this is a way of, we all feel this way in some fashion. We want to go back and see what things have been like, what things are like, and how things can be. Meanwhile, I was doing other things. In the 80s, I got involved with the Nag Hammadi library. Alternative gospels, alternative texts that were discovered late, recently, alternative to the Bible. And this got me involved in making big books, ridiculously big books. 48-foot long books. They were interesting. I was trying to tell stories invent stories about the beginning of the world, for example. You know, minor things. Characters that we hoped might exist, but not necessarily did exist. Anyway, this is a big inspiration for me, and those books were sizable, you know. I liked the idea of making books that were cinematic, that were large. Of course, Cecil B. DeMille kind of stuff, because they could be folded up. So at that time, I was making these enormous things. That didn't last long. It lasted a while. I was going to talk about writing. I was going to talk about writing more than books. One day, I went out to Carkeek Park, which is just a couple of miles north of us. And it was January. It was a cold day. But I decided I wanted to have a picnic by myself. So I went up there, I went to Dick's, and I got something from Dick's, and I went up there. And I sat. There was nobody there. And I noticed some chickadees in a tree next to me. They were just kind of playing around up and down. And so I made this poem later. Later I made it. I thought, oh, this is beautiful. They were sort of going up and down, just sort of fussing around in the tree. Chickadee, permanent in a thrall of thews. I like to play with words. Thews are kind of like branches. A thrall is a bunch of branches. Sunlight, sign, grasping skinny limbs, backdrop of azulin chills, ribbed tines of gone leaves, frost in stone brown bits, scrubble or cold, whereby time is your quick posture, bright, wise, tiny bird, turning into the quieting day. I really like this poem. I turned it into a little broadside. This paper is by Margaret Salstrand, which has leaves and stuff in it, and I thought it was appropriate. That's one of my favorites. One time, Kate and I went to the beach. We went to Grace Harbor, and it was in November, and the waves were very powerful. They were churning up all kinds of stuff, and when the waves get powerful, they churn up suds. I don't know the science of it, but we went there and the whole beach was covered with these suds. So we went back and I sat by the fire in the house and I came up with this. This doesn't have covers yet. This is called The Flight of the Suds, an opera in one churn. Because I was thinking of the suds being churned up. And I made this with suminagashi. Yeah, decorated the paper with suminagashi. And like it was sudsy. And it sort of bounded in this mysterious way. So it's an opera, 4 characters. The cold January breezes have whipped sea froths into stiff peaks around poor Og and Zog, who were the main characters. What a beach this is to treat visitors so. Remorseless waves wheeze like low thunder in the paling light, rise and fall as shadows spilling across black sand. Yet Og and Zog play in the fluttering foam. How the evanescent globes form in their tiny universe, only to roll away with the wind. Hey Zog, set up this bent piece of metal. Anyway, it goes on. The point is that they're trying to capture the waves and they can't. So we get to the end and the suds are increasingly covering them. They're being inundated with the suds. And they have to retreat. At the end, there's a poem. Down by the sea, such a beautiful green, our heroes encountered big sights only seen by ancients of old, by fish and by fowl that boggled their minds and required a towel. At the shore of the sea, such a beautiful brown, our heroes dared fate with nary a frown, upright at last, though still less than bright. They, fraught with fright, finagled, faint fight. At the edge of the water, our heroes assembled to wrestle the elements through till they trembled against all manner of wanton fury. Og and Zog dissembled in more than a hurry. Nevertheless, this occasion was over so fast. Our heroes, in a wink, were turned to repast, and finally, leaving their seafoodish venue, slimed homeward to try a more dryified menu. That's Flight of the Suds. Couple more books. Dante, has influenced me a good deal. The Inferno. And James Wright was another inspirer. Some beautiful poems in here. Here's a sonnet. My grandmother's ghost. She skimmed the yellow water like a moth, trailing her feet across the shallow stream. She saw the berries, paused and sampled them, where a slight spider cleaned his narrow tooth. Light in the air, she fluttered up the path, so delicate to shun the leaves and damp, like some young wife. Only a slender lamp to find her stray child, or the moon, or both. Even before she reached the empty house, she beat her wings ever so lightly, rose, followed a bee where apples blew like snow, and then, forgetting what she wanted there, too full of blossom and green light to care, she hurried to the ground, slipped below. These are my notebooks. These are some of them. I started them 1977, and I'm still doing that. This is some of them. I put things in here, put my ideas. I print things out on the computer and put them in the books. I write them in the books and then print them and whatnot. And go from there. Fleet Foxes. Ticket for. This is the first one. This is the latest one. There are 22 of them. And this is Kate on the cover. About 10 years ago, I decided I was getting too fussy with words, and I just wanted to talk, basically make words the way I like them to sound, and instead of farting around with nonsense, I thought I would just write what I thought. We went to the ocean. Went to the Quilcene Needles and Quileute Needles, which are these rock formations that stick out of the ocean. This is in 2019. They don't write, they don't speak, they abide by tides of the ocean, depicting their forms. They vary by view, to be battered by storm and waves, and stand beat up, born, pressed as Rodin fingered life into bronze. But this is rock it made itself and will not leave. Still, they weave mystery, no answer has dared solve. There, the vastness of the sea, while here, what would you like of land other than what you have? Look. Sometimes they don't fit. Talking about where painting or poems come from, there's a painting in the Art Institute of Chicago by Kroupa, Song of the Lark. And it's this beautiful picture of a young lady harvesting something in a field at dawn, and the sun is just coming up. And she's standing there, and way up, there's a small bird, a lark. Now, there's also a musical piece by Ray Vaughan Williams. Song of the Lark, which is really, really beautiful. It's a lark ascending, and the lark, the song, the music just ascends and ascends and ends with this beautiful, very high note on the violin, and it just drives me crazy. I like it. So I sort of associated that with this painting, which I love to see, and I go to see it every time I get over there. Song of the Lark, a gift is making the welcome real from nothing. She searched for the sound. It was behind her. She didn't turn for fear it would disappear. So she stood, one among the glimmering stalks of spring harvest. It was early morning, and she agreed with the colors of dawn. Sometimes time goes away, and that's just what it did. That morning of the meadowlark, singing still behind, as it will in real life. What's new? Do we have yeah, the dancer or the at the market? At the market. Sorry, folks. We're getting there. I'll read you something else in the meantime. Okay, this is a good one. This is called Icarus. I was thinking of Icarus, who flew before me, jealous even of his students. It was his dad. Made me warning, delivering the waxen wings, the matter of despair, as well as desire. I flew. What was weight dispersed in disappearance as I became what he made me, a voice grave but transcendent, lost, found, muscled up onto a beach. God's son remade me despite myself, my being, my bits and pieces, welded out of into flaws. I did not feel the husky dark sand, could not breathe its salt musk, order of things arriving dead from the sea's bottom. I remembered what I did not heed, another warmth, all mysterious movement in another tongue, of another face, unrepentant, to have fallen from sun to sun. I tried what was not possible. I lie now where he put me, comfortably, while my thought mingles clouds and air, builds and builds. This is a piece I like a lot. I was going to turn into a book. I haven't yet, but I intend to. I fully intend to. At the market, a dancer was stretching. Dust rose into cut and polished perfect gems. According to the music, the dancer, stretched for the show to be, smiling, said, I need water. You know what I want. Unlimbed and penniless, what was there left but to summon rain? That's one of the few poems that sort of there's an image of me. Anyway, these are paintings I made to accompany that poem. The idea was for things to be sort of flipping around a bit. And this is acrylic on museum board. At some point, this is going to be turned into a book. But this was fun to make. Two figures. I was going to talk about words, but in each of these images, there are two figures intertwining with one another. There are all kinds of things flying around about it. Just shapes. See, what else have we got? Must have something else. This is what started it all. Peter Rabbit. I was in graduate school, I got a job at Mills College Library. And I did various tasks there. It's also where I learned to do letterpress printing. One of my jobs was to be at the reception, or the reception desk, I guess, when people brought books in. And somebody brought Tale of Peter Rabbit. They had checked it out. They were bringing it back to the library. And I had never really seen it before. And I got hooked on it. And it was, it's a beautiful little book. And at the same time, one of the librarians taught me how to print letterpress. And I'm forever grateful to librarians for any number of reasons. But this was the magic thing. So I learned letterpress and I went on to do it forever.
The debate.
What do we got?
The debate.
The debate. Okay, this is one of the pieces that this is my new realm of thought. The debate. And so when I was in college, I was on a debating team. And I sort of learned how to do that. And so I thought, okay, ideas going back and forth. The debate, and they settled. The devil or the ornery ghost, laughing till he spilled, till he mumbled something, couldn't quite hold the concept of a wrong thought. Gone even wronger, and the clementine heart breathing salt air of cold piers where it was decided as though final, jittered like only right hand leaves, where the thought of too far scurried dusty brickwork. All the same, that don't go made what difference was or could be ever. The story behind this was I was leaving, and everything, all of poetry is about either nature or romance. And so you're sort of stuck. You gotta do one or the other. And there are story poems, descriptions of landscape and so on and so forth. But the ones that really count are romance and nature. I've sort of relegated the nature poems to haiku and other things, but the romance is a different story because you're talking about things that are probably real, or maybe not real, but you can't shy away from that. Romance is usually it's about love lost, and there's nothing you can do about that, but you try. And losing love is a hard thing, and you have to explain it to yourself. That's why you write about it, hoping that it'll explain things. you don't want to be confessional about it. You don't want to be nonsensical about it. You just want to be practical about it. Necessity of it, that the necessity of being reality. So this thing was about the reality of it. I don't think this will ever be a book, because I wouldn't know how to make images for this. But I like what it does. I guess I like what it did. And it's in the form that I've adopted that I use now a great deal. It's just a series of lines, short syllables, 6 lines. This one's all combined, but sometimes it's not. And there's an inevitability about poetry that it's not like you're relying upon it. It's a tool for creating a reality, creating a solution. And I think that's what I've always tried to do, is create a solution. In that creation, I'm adhering to some things that I learned in college with my poetry teacher. One was that he was adamant about not using fat words. Fat words like wonderful or beautiful. You don't ask questions in poetry. You make statements. These kinds of things. So I've avoided fat words as much as possible. You never say like. You never say something is like something. Either is or it isn't. In poetry, it is or it isn't. Ultimately, it's a very satisfying enterprise. It can cure your ills. It's a puzzle. You create the puzzle and you solve it, and then you're very happy. I'm very happy when I write a good poem. And that's very satisfactory. I am pleased. Does anybody have any questions? I don't know if that was coherent.
We did get quite a few questions in, Jim, and I know you wanted to talk about writing, but the images were so striking that we're very interested in those as well. So I'll just go through these. On your are your images all, you mentioned one of them was acrylic. Are they all acrylic, or do you combine drawing or photographs or ink, or like in your notebooks? What were they in the notebooks?
Good point. Good question. These happen to be acrylic. Montana Charlie's, they're Prismacolor pencil. Bear in mind, this was made in 1977. These are Prismacolor on arch cover, black arch cover.
Would it be all right if I threw in that the library owns a copy of this? This is an addition piece. So you guys could come and actually look at it and have it in your hands once we're open again.
I made 12 of these. So you've got one and I've got one and the others are elsewhere.
Maybe we could have a reunion of them and bring them all together. Since if I'm not mistaken, Jim, all the artwork has individually been done. They're not prints. So
No,
there's
they're
going to
not.
be variation. That would be pretty interesting to see, actually.
One thing about Japanese binding is, or sides on binding, you can't tell the front from the back. So what I did to distinguish the front from the back was to add these things. And this is a little bag of wool with little rocks and stones and seashells in them that I gathered in Montana and California. And they're sealed up in that bag. And there's beads and there's all that stuff. Anyway, so wave it around. But that was the main reason for doing that.
What about that, the print that you're doing 100 of with the little squares? What were those? Yeah, that one, Kate. What are
These
those?
These are not prints. This is watercolor and ink.
Oh,
And it's number 96. It's ink and watercolor. I think the library has some.
Yes, we have, I think, 3.
Yeah.
She said with a question mark. I think that's right.
those are really beautiful.
They're gorgeous. When I picked out I think we had one, and then relatively recently, like what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I got 2 more from Jim, and it was very hard to decide which ones. I think that whole series, if I had a fantasy about his work, I would want to bring all the parts of that series together in an exhibition. That would be really, really wonderful.
Yeah, that would be difficult because they're scattered all over the place. And
Yes, I know, but it would be such a nice challenge.
nevertheless, yes. They were inspired just I was just trying to remember things. It's a way of remembering places or inventing places or telling a story by way of these places and creating some sort of sense of logic along the way. They were all generally, each one started with some sort of a question. And the texts were, well, I'll read this one. The texts were generally devised to arrive at an answer. Because that's what you're always doing. You're always trying to arrive at an answer. A nearer end, the journey, fractioning inches, not there, not yet, is fire in the hand, webbed hills, no, but one law. The one law being that they exist, and so the answer is that you exist. And that's the law.
Jim, do your books always start with your words, or do you sometimes have a picture that you then write a poem for?
Good question. It's not consistent. Often I'll come up with a title and then I like the title. I thought, oh, that's cool. And then I'll make something that would follow that. Other times I will come up with images and then attach a title to them and then attach a continuum to it, to a text. It varies. Sometimes I get into dreams, you know, a thing will come to me in a dream, like Only When the River Moves. I made a book called Only When the River Moves, which I don't know if it's here or not. Don't worry about it. I thought I got this idea only when the river moves. And from that came some words, and from that came images, paper cuts in that case. So no, it's not. I can't see anybody. It's not consistent from one to the next. It happens as it happens. Sometimes, well, there's one book that took me 20 years to finish. It was called Prairie Songs. I started it in 1989 with the text, and I printed it in 1989, but I couldn't figure out how to do it, how to put it together. But I liked the text, so I just kept that for a while. And then in 2009, I was doing monotypes down on the Vandercook. And I said, okay, this is perfect. So then I was also doing collage at the time. So I was doing monotype and collage, and this, I thought, okay, this is perfect for Prairie Songs. So I made the book, but it took 20 years. It sold in a week. It was bizarre. But to answer your question, no, there is no consistent. Sometimes I'll have words. Sometimes I'll have words and no images. Sometimes I'll have images and no words. One of my favorite pieces was a collage piece that went to somebody in California. It's called My Name is Joe. It was a collage. It had no text, but I printed the title in letterpress and pasted it onto the piece. The reason for that piece was that the first 3 months of my life, my name was Joseph, which was my mother's father's name. Eventually, after 3 or 4 months, they changed it back. It was legally changed back to James, which was my father's father's name. Why, I don't know, because I was 4 months old. But I've always been intrigued by the fact that for 4 months of my life, I was named Joe. So if you want to call me Joe, go ahead. Anything else?
Anybody else have any questions?
What are you working on now?
I'm just writing now. Not much because we've been
Busy.
busy with other things. We just had an elevator put in our house. So now I can go down to the basement and use the letterpress again after years of not being able to get down there. So I hope to get back to printing. I have some books that like this one, like this one is not finished. I have to put it back together again. I have oh, this one. Oh, this is a mysterious one. Anyway, I have things I have to put together. A number of years ago, I got into mazes. And I made mazes. And there is a text to go along with this. These are watercolor. And they need to be bound. And there's these are patterns based on constellations in the sky. Some are quite basic, like this one. Anyway, these are things that need to be finished. And I haven't been able to finish for a variety of reasons. So I'm hoping to be able to finish these now that we're a little more stable.
Jim, do you have an image of how you're going to put that one together? What form it's going to take?
Oh, it'll be a accordion book. It'll be
Good.
accordion, but probably Jim joint. I don't know if we talked about the Jim joint, but it's a way of putting panels together that are articulated that I use quite frequently.
And that's often one of the main questions I get when showing your work to other artists is they want to know how you did that. And so we've got that little sample you made for me years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So,
It's
but I'm sure you talking about it would be a lot more advantageous than me talking about it.
It's basically a hinge that is made of sewing book cloth together. And the hinge goes between the page and the board next to it, and which may have text on it or whatever, and it's glued together. And but the fact that it's sewn is that it's oh, here's an example.
Hey, Kate's on it.
Kate's on it. Good, thank you. Oh, this is a nice piece. This is a thing called water drop. And this was, speaking of where things, I wanted to talk more about where things come from, where ideas come from. And this idea came from, we were visiting friends in New York. And in their backyard, there was a sort of a waterfall. And but they were just droplets and just driplets and whatnot. And there were sort of striations of a rock, and the driplets were coming down. So very slowly, you know, bit by bit by bit. And so I got this idea for a poem, and this is called Water Drop. And then these are paper cuts, collage, which were a pain in the ass Because I didn't want to overlay them. I wanted them to intersect with one another. So these are pieces of Japanese paper glued with PVA onto paper board, and this is the text. And the problem with gluing Japanese paper is that as soon as you put glue on it, it wants to curl up, and it'll drive you crazy. So you just have to be patient and go with it. And, this is an example of Jim Joy. It's
Jim Koss.
this is what it looks like. It's sewn cloth. And it's, you know, it articulates very well. It's very strong. And it's fun. If you like to sew, this is fun. If you don't like to sew, it's not fun.
Makes the hinges, you sew them first, right? Before you insert them in the book.
Yeah. Everything is sewn together, and then you add in the pieces of the book. But this is absolutely crazy. But nevertheless, the backside, this is Japanese paper called Kodai Nishigi Yuzen Mumagami. It's a wrinkled paper that's stencil dyed. You can't get it anymore. But it's really beautiful stuff. It's strong. Most people think it's cloth, but it's really beautiful stuff. Anyway, that's the Jim joint, and
I'm going to guess that probably the ones that the University of Washington Library has probably have gotten more use than any of the other books you've made anywhere else in the world. And that Jim joint holds up remarkably well. I have not had any failure. And while I do try to get students to be careful, they're not always as careful as I would like. And so far, they work really well, Jim. So you get an A+ for mechanics.
well, I don't particularly like binding books, so this I like. I figure it's a necessity. If you're doing this stuff, you gotta do something with it. But this I enjoy, partly because it's sculptural. I like it when it's closed. I like it when it's open. And I think it's quite strong. And I think it'll last a long time. It's sewn with silk thread.
And when they stand up, I think that too is really good because it allows full opening and you get the experience of the whole book at once, or you can see it page by page or in groups of 4 at a time. It really allows more of a conversation, I think, between the audience person and the book itself. That's just my perception of watching students work with the materials over a long period of time.
One reason for making these accordion books is that it can be opened into the entirety, so you can see the whole book, but they could also be closed or, you know, turned page by page. One of my favorite, good number of years ago, there was a show up in Bellingham,
Right.
at Western University, the Western Washington University, the gallery. And I had 3 books up there and they were all accordions and they were all displayed entirely on the shelves. And I thought, oh boy, this is very cool. They wouldn't let me take picture of them.
They wouldn't let you take pictures of your own work?
No,
Oh, dear.
so there's no documentation of that. So it only exists in memory.
Oh,
But you know, it was like, this is why you make them this way.
yeah.
For the drama.
Well, I think if there's no questions, I would just like to put in a request that when we can gather together, maybe we have a show and tell of Jim's books. I'd love to see those colors up close and the Jim joint. Your colors that you used in your paintings, Jim, are just, they're so stunning to me. I really like those combinations. So,
Thank
and so anyway, that's my request, Sandra. So let's have a little open house of the holdings that the library has. And
Yep. You got it. All I got to do is convince, like 6,000 people that it's okay to come back to campus. I mean, at this point, we're hardly being allowed in the building alone. It's very strange to go into special collections and be the only person there. Yeah, I don't like that at all. So it would be great to host the guild and to look at real things. So we can all pray for that, please.
Someday
Yeah.
soon. Well, thank you all for putting up with me.
Oh yeah, it's been a real struggle.
thank you for talking about your books. I look forward to seeing them.
You're entirely welcome. Thank you.
All right, and we'll see everybody else back on in May.
Yep.
And there will be news forthcoming. So thank you all for coming tonight, and go forth and be safe and wear your mask, and so that we can get together in person soon.
Yes.
All right.
Get your shots.
I
Right.
got my shots.
Good.
Bye,
All
everybody.
right.
So long.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.